The genesis of the book is to answer the question, why can't the world be more like the masters? What is so special about the masters? And I went through, and we'll talk about these. I identified 10 different principles that make the masters such a special place. And what I did is for each of the 10 principles, I went through and I identified other companies that actually do it.
Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Links for Life. It's Masters Week almost. We're just a few weeks away from the Masters starting, and for me and for a lot of you listening, you may have already started the golf season, but this is kind of like the official launch of the golf season with Masters Week coming up, and I don't know, I just get so excited about it all. And so on Links for Life, this episode today and episode that will post in 2 weeks is all kind of in celebration of Masters Week. And so I have as my special guest today, John Sabino, who is the author of the Augusta Principles. And so I'm going to hold it up for those who are watching on YouTube. And you can see it's just an exciting book that is about some of the tried and true principles that have carried through the entire history from 1931 until today at Augusta National that sets that place and this tournament apart. And so if you've ever had the privilege of going to Augusta National, I've never known a single person that's gone that hadn't said, that is an extraordinary experience. And so John has captured what is at the essence, what is at the core of that special experience? What are the core principles that Augusta National's membership and leadership have applied that make Augusta National and the Masters stand above all other places? And then from there, how those principles apply to business and life, which fits so perfectly with Links for Life, the intersection of golf, growth, and God. So I'm so excited to have John not only just talk about his experience with the Masters and what led to this book, but some of the principles behind it. So John, welcome to Links for Life.
Thanks, Tommy. I'm thrilled to be here. So I went to my first Masters in 1997. And as you said, and for those that have been there, and even for those that haven't, it's often a life-changing experience. Like when I walked in for the first time, it's just overwhelming. And there's a lot of reasons for that. First is just the perfection of the environment. You know, there's not a weed to be found. Everything is perfectly manicured. But beyond that, they just treat you with so much respect. Everybody on the property is respectful. And that's the security guards, the people that are serving the food. It's just an incredible environment. The thing also that really strikes you, and I think it's gotten more acute over the last 10, 15, 20 years with the advent of the iPhone, is everybody is just civil. And everybody is in the present. And a big part of that is you're not allowed to bring your phone in. And it's just such a refreshing experience. And then obviously, you know, the prices, the low prices and the way they treat you there. So that was, you know, a lot of people have that experience. But for me, every time I left, I've been lucky to go about 9 or 10 times. Every time I left, I thought to myself, well, you know, I leave. And this is really the genesis of the book. The genesis of the book is to answer the question, why can't the world be more like the Masters?
Oh, I love that. Why? That's just such a great question. Yeah.
Yeah, because you leave and then, you go back to the world of commercialism, the world of incivility. So one part of the book is just what is so special about the Masters. And I went through, and we'll talk about these. I identified 10 different principles that make the Masters such a special place. But also, just I've gotten cranky over the last couple of decades because, it used to be you would call a company and they would pick up the phone and they would answer the question. Now you get a call tree or you're on hold for 45 minutes, or you try to watch a baseball game or a basketball game and half the broadcast is commercials. So I really started to look at, how is the Masters able to do this, whereas other organizations can't? And what I did is for each of the 10 principles, I went through and I identified other companies that actually do it. So quickly, like one of the principles is don't be overly commercial. And the Masters excels at doing that. They're probably they describe themselves as the last non-commercial sporting event in the world, which is spot on. And most companies just overdo it, with their commercialism. But one of the companies identified where the world doesn't, can be like the Masters is Costco. Costco doesn't advertise at all. The founder of the company set a principle for their company and said, he called advertising evil. He said it just wastes money. And what they wanted to do was to get new customers by word of mouth. And obviously it's been a phenomenally successful company. And then lastly, there's been a lot of books written about great brands. You look at Apple, Nike, Disney, they've all had books written about them explaining or trying to explain what's behind that. Nobody's ever done that for Augusta. And it just dawned on me that you've got 300 of the smartest and most successful people around the world that are members of Augusta. And the club is taking their collective wisdom and they're filtering it into the tournament. And it's just something that I think we could all learn from. So I spent most of my career in the business world. Unfortunately, I got sick 8 years ago. I was diagnosed with leukemia and I had to stop working. Yeah, it was not fun. And I had to stop working shortly after that. And my wife kept pestering me. She kept saying, you need to do something else. I couldn't go to the office anymore because my immune system is compromised and so forth. But she said, you need a project. So this was my project to sort of get me out of her hair. And it turned into a fascinating look at what Augusta's all about.
Al, that's great. I appreciate your sharing that story. And, sometimes those really, really difficult events kind of redirect us to places of purpose and passion that I guess in some ways transcend, even the difficult moments that we go through. I mean, leukemia is a tough one to transcend, but I imagine this has really been a great help for you through this journey.
Well, leukemia is a vicious form of cancer. When you're diagnosed, you're admitted to the hospital immediately. You immediately start chemo, and it's very tough. You can't leave the hospital for at least a month. So it was a testing time. I got through with the prayers of my family and friends. A great hospital in Philadelphia, University of Pennsylvania, took care of me. But you need something to hang on to. You're in an antiseptic environment. You're getting stuck with needles in the middle of the night. And obviously I wanted to survive. I've got two children, to see them grow up and to be with my wife. But I also just longed. The Masters is my favorite place. Augusta is my favorite place in the world. And I just had a goal to eventually one day go back and, my favorite place on the course is 13th hole, is to just go back and go there. And as I said, I had a phenomenal team of doctors and nurses, and they fixed me physically, but mentally it just wears you down. Like spiritually, you're broken. Your soul just needs repair. And obviously through my faith, it was very helpful to help me get through that. But to go back to Augusta, when we finally got back, and I pestered my oncologist, she wouldn't let me go. She said, your immune system's not really that good. You can't fly. You shouldn't be around people. And I kept pestering her. And she's not a golfer, but everybody knows what the Masters is. And eventually we went. And when we finally sat down in the grandstand overlooking the 13th green, to me, that's when the spiritual side of the healing and the emotional side really started to kick in. So the Masters has always meant a lot to me, probably more so than a lot of people. But it was part of my healing process, and it frankly it helped me get through.
Now, thank you for sharing that. I think the Masters has had that kind of surprising effect on a lot of people. And, one of the things I've learned just through my own experiences is that I think we underestimate the importance and the magnitude of place in our lives and the opportunity or the ways in which places, some specific places, can minister and create healing in us. And we think in our mind somehow that, place shouldn't be that important. And yet, actually throughout the Bible, place is so important in God's plan. And so it doesn't surprise me, in a sense, but it's really meaningful to hear how you express that, and how important that even risky move was for you to take to go and be there.
Yeah, you have to make sure you have to make choices in life, right? I can't be a hermit, and that's one of the places that we choose to take risk, and it's worth it every single time we go there. It's just a very special place. Yeah.
Well, just describe for me again. You kind of touched on it when we started, but I've talked to several people, and I've gotten to have the experience because I've had the opportunity to go, about a dozen times to the Masters over, 30 or so years. So not every year, not for all rounds or whatever, but I've had that experience, and I've had the experience of taking many people for the first time, friends, other people within my family, my sons. And it's always a really special thing to walk alongside someone for the first time, because Augusta is one of a few places that over delivers to expectations. I've gone with so many people who were so excited, who thought it was going to be great, and their almost immediate responses, this is even better than I imagined. And so, I'm curious, particularly given the place you were. Well, I guess this was, a good while before your leukemia. Tell me again a little bit about what that first experience was, walking in, seeing the grounds, experiencing Augusta for the first time.
Yeah, a lot of people describe it as a Disneyland for adults, which I think is a good description. And I studied Disney a lot as I was writing the book, because they're one of the organizations that has figured it out, how to do a lot of the same things that Augusta does. And their goal is to just make every child's day, right? They want it to be a special place. So to me, it's I also describe it's more than the sum of its parts, right? It's each of the principles and the things that they do on their own are important, but when you bring them all together, it actually becomes overwhelming, right? To be treated that nicely, like in today's world, and part of this is just, with Twitter and with cable news, we're taught to if you don't agree with somebody, they're your enemy, etc. You go to the Masters and everybody talks to you. You sit down next to somebody in a grandstand, and people are just naturally friendly, and you strike up conversations, and there's no animosity. Nobody cares if you're a doctor or you're a plumber. It's just a place that creates a sense that there's something greater. And part of that, I think, goes back to if you look at the history of the tournament, which I'm sure you know well, Bobby Jones and Cliff Roberts founded the tournament. And the way I describe it, Jones was the soul of the Masters, and Roberts is the body, right? Jones, he set the tone. He wanted it to be a civil place, and the rules that he set in place are still followed. He wanted people to be treated with the utmost respect. And those things, again, they just come through. The other thing that strikes me, like you go for the first time and you think this is perfect. Can't be any better. But one of the principles the tournament operates with is continuous improvement. And this was something that Cliff Roberts laid down. He said if a tournament is not getting better every year, then they're going backwards. So you think, boy, this is the best place I've ever been to. And you go the next year and they've expanded a viewing area, or they've added more food options that are reasonably priced, or they focus on making the patron experience better each time. I mean, the free parking, what event in the world has free parking? And they just, they keep adding different pavilions and places of hospitality. To me, it's just that the fact that they are so focused on that, and it's noticeable. You go every year, or you return after a couple of years, and you find out that they've somehow improved it, which is incredible. I also had the privilege, and not many people have done this. I got to play the course. Marco
Oh my
Mira had me
goodness.
as
My dream.
yeah, he had me as his guest one year, and former champions are only allowed to bring a guest the Sunday before the Masters. So before the 2013 Masters, I was his guest, and as perfect as everything is that patrons see or that you see on TV, he took me with him as he was checking in for the Masters. So I got to go to a bunch of different buildings behind the scenes that nobody else sees. And one of the things Augusta, I think, does better than any organization in the world is their attention to detail. So we're walking behind the scenes, and there's two pieces of sidewalk that meet at an irregular angle. So there's a piece of grass, maybe 2 feet by 1 foot, very small piece of grass. It's perfectly manicured, right? There's like, it's just like the rest of the course. It just shows that, you go in the clubhouse, it looks like it's been freshly painted. The ambiance is very quiet and soothing. They just carry it into everything that they do. And again, part of that is Clifford Roberts was maniacal in his attention to detail, right?
Dictator.
To be kind, yeah.
Yeah.
So, like some of the things that he did, he hated if a picture was hanging and it wasn't straight. So he made sure that every picture had two hooks in it, so it couldn't be crooked. He hated dirty dollar bills. So in the pro shop, if you use cash, they only use brand new dollar bills. That's something that he instituted. So like it again, he set the tone on that attention to detail. And to the club's credit and the leadership of the club, they take that to heart. They continue to focus on that, and they continue to make things even better. That's the thing that really strikes me. The other thing that strikes you is how much they just respect tradition. They just go out of their way to make sure that former champions, the amateurs, that the honorary starters, I mean, you could name a dozen different things. It's not many organizations, unfortunately, still honor tradition in that way. And that you feel that when you're there, you really get that sense when you walk around the course.
Well, all of these things are just so true, and they've had this unique ability to do things like honor tradition, this maniacal commitment to excellence, kind of exacted by a dictator-like leader.
Yep.
The careful following of the rules, yet this incredible kindness, the constant improvement, all of these things that, as you say in the book, you bring in, other companies that can perhaps mimic one of the qualities. And yet Augusta has managed to do, all 10 of these principles, and in a way that is received kind of with calmness and appreciation as opposed to rigidness. And I think it's just amazing how they go about that. And that's all part, of the experience that even non-golfers appreciate in, incredible ways.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. And a lot of people think, and I even thought this when I started the book, I thought, well, of course Augusta could do this. They have essentially unlimited amounts of money. They're a very wealthy club. They generate a lot of income through the sales of merchandise. How do you expect other companies or even people to replicate this? And I go through and a couple and I think that one of the closest analogies is Ritz-Carlton. Ritz-Carlton does a very good job. They're always getting better. They treat their guests with a lot of respect. They have a very good attention to detail. So you look at that and you say, of course, what does it cost to stay at a Ritz-Carlton? Not cheap. You would think it always takes a lot of money, but I give a couple of examples in the book where a lot of it just comes down to commitment, right? A company makes a commitment to do something and to be very good at it. And one of my favorite examples is a company called Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's, for those not in the South, they might not be familiar with Buc-ee's. They're basically travel centers, gas stations. You pull off a highway, you go in and you can shop and you get gas, etc. And one of the things that strikes you immediately when you go to the Masters, you go to the men's room and it's like the cleanest place you've ever been. They've got greeters, they're greeting you, they're cheery people as you're going into the bathrooms. It's spotless. They're cleaning after every person leaves. It's incredible. Buc-ee's does the same thing. They made it a commitment. They said that they want to have the cleanest restrooms in America, and they do. They have attendance 24 hours a day. They make it a point of pride to do that. So again, if a series, of travel centers can commit to do that, it shows you don't have to have an unlimited amount of money to commit to some of the things that the Masters does.
Well, I think it's really interesting because people will write off the Masters, as you'd say, because they have this, unlimited pot of money. But you have to ask which came first? The huge retail sales, is that because of the brand and how they do about it? So you think about Costco as you talk about, in the book, that doesn't advertise and yet is the third largest retailer in the country. So which comes first, the commitment to excellence or the results, the outcome? And I think the Masters would cause you to think maybe it's those commitments that precede and bring about the incredible results. And as you talk about in the book, in the early days, they were struggling to make it go, and yet they maintained this commitment. So there's a perspective and a courage that is necessary on the leadership part at Augusta to say, we're going to run a tournament that only has a few minutes of commercials, per hour, whereas most people don't think they can survive with that. So there are a lot of lessons with it. And so, as I get excited about the Masters, and I've had the same experience. I remember walking in many years ago, and it was the first year that they had the new driving range open.
Right. Right.
And I walked through, and you of course had this thought that, well, this is going to be the year that I don't notice any particular change. And then you walk in and you see this driving range that is beyond all driving ranges before all the other clubs were creating the driving ranges that are beyond all driving ranges. And it's just, they continue to surprise and delight, which wouldn't that be a great way for businesses to run their businesses?
I couldn't agree more. Like you go to the Masters and everybody's got their mental list, right? They want to follow Tiger Woods or Jordan Spieth or whoever. They want to go look at Amen Corner. If you go in the top entrance, you have to walk by the driving range. And what I always find is I get sucked in. But you're right.
Oh, yeah.
It's so incredibly good. You go and you sit there, like 2.5 hours later, you're thinking to yourself, I better go do something else. It's
Yeah.
mesmerizing how good it is what they did there.
Well,
Yep.
there's so many, experiences like that. Do you have a favorite Masters moment from your times there?
It seems a little weird, but my wife comes with me when I go, and she loves to go to practice rounds. And the reason she does is during practice rounds on the 16th hole, after the pros hit their practice shots, they try to skip the ball over the pond and see if it could hop up on the green. So some of our favorite moments are just sitting on that 16th green. Again, you sit down and you're there for hours and hours, just watching folks try to skip shots across the pond and land it on the green, right? And I think that comment is kind of emblematic of what the Masters is about. It's not necessarily where we saw a great shot, and we have seen many great shots. It's and you hear roars and you get to see people chipping in, etc. Those are incredible. But and I talk about this in the book. I quote a bunch of different people. There's a journalist. I think she's either from CBS or NBC. She said, she goes with her father and went with her father once and said it was the greatest day of her life. I mean, those are it's a lot of it, like you said, bringing new people and being with them when they experience it. A lot of it is just about the experience of being with other people and just having it be a collective experience. It's just incredible and
Yeah,
very,
and
very memorable. Yeah.
it is, and as you pointed out, it's one of the two of the things that I really love about the Masters. One is there's no cell phone policy, which is again different from I believe every other tournament on tour. But what that allows is for you to enjoy with someone else the experience of the Masters in a different way because there's a quietness and a calm and an unrushed nature, which, filming every shot with your iPhone robs you of in other places. So that ability to just sit for, you know, 3-5 minutes between groups that are coming through a hole that you happen to be watching adds to the experience. And then the other part, which is so counterintuitive that I love, I don't think you said anything about this in the book, is the lack of electronic scoreboards.
Yeah, it's really great.
It
Great,
is
isn't it?
so great. So everything is hand done in terms of the scoreboards, which you would think would detract from the experience because you're not catching, all of these, the moment by moment changes and all of the stats that they now give on these scoreboards. But what you find as a spectator is that in between things, you're constantly looking up at the scoreboard. And then as they lower a line of scores, there's this collective hush while people watch to see what's going to happen with the score. Did the person just get a par, or birdie, or a bogey, or a double bogey? What happened? And so the scoreboard, which is not electronic, builds the anticipation in a monstrous way as you're watching the scoreboard. So the lack of technology actually increases the excitement of the experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one of the principles I identified in the book is use technology wisely. And that's a great example of using technology wisely. Limiting cell phones is another way. But what's interesting about Augusta National and the Masters, it's full of contradictions. Like people think, okay, look, it's a lot of wealthy people. They're generally older. I think average age is 65. You'd think, okay, they're not technology sophisticated. They're very sophisticated. They're on 15 different technology platforms. A couple of years ago, they posted a TikTok video, right? TikTok, it's right. Who would have thought? It had more views than the final round on Sunday. So, like when I started to do research on the book, I didn't have insider access. When I wrote the book, and I started to do research, and I read every book about the Masters. I read through every Masters journal that was ever issued. But I also, a great resource was their websites and their technology platforms. People think that they're secretive, and I describe it more as they're discreet, right? They're the anti-Kardashians, right? They're not, they just do things in a classy way. But if you actually go through, and it's very hard to consume all the content they put out, especially during Masters Week. They have so many different platforms. They're on YouTube, they're on Instagram, etc. But they reveal quite a bit, even behind the scenes. So I think the moniker of them being a little stodgy and secretive, I actually don't buy into that as much after doing all the research and writing the book. They're very technology sophisticated. Again, they're doing it in a way that is they're never pushing an agenda, right? All they're trying to do to like you said, they're trying to surprise you and delight you, and they do. It's incredible. And I put a couple of comments in the book about people that leave on Instagram and so forth, and I agree with this. It's the best Instagram site that there is. It's incredible. So for your viewers, if they haven't looked at Instagram, they should check it out as the tournament goes on this year. It's really quite an experience.
Yeah. Well, it is just a series of contrast and paradoxes. One of the things that you've pointed out, it is incredibly rigid in terms of the rules, and
Very.
yet when you go, you will never get a stern or a harsh look or comment from anybody. So the very fact that everybody knows the rules are in stone and will be enforced causes all of these incredibly powerful people that go to completely honor and respect all of the rules, like not running or whatever the different situation will be, and it creates this otherworldly civility that just doesn't exist. One of the things that just has absolutely floored me over the years, when we go, we've got now a large collection of Masters chairs
Yeah, me too.
that we take to sit, in the particular place that we want to sit. We've kind of got our favorite spots, and we'll go. And at the Masters, you can, if you arrive early enough, you can put your chairs in the prime location that anybody could want to get to see the Masters. And then you can go disappear for 4 hours and wait and come back at the height of competition, and nobody will have touched your chairs. They will be there ready for you to sit down. And where else can you walk away from something like that, that is just inviting people to abuse the rules and take advantage and move your chairs and put theirs in your place, and who would ever know, that type of thing. But yet it invites the best out of people
It does. Yeah.
because they treat you with that kind of respect.
Yep. That's why I wrote the book. There's just so much to learn about what the tournament does. And going back to one of your earlier comments about, what comes first, I think, like, for example, the food prices and so forth. Like, you go to the PGA tournament, it's $14 for a beer. At the Masters, I forget what it is. It's like $5 or less. A sandwich, the pimento cheese is $1.50. Again, that completely counterintuitive. You would think if you want to make more money, you have the higher prices, but it's actually the opposite. And one of the organizations I put in the book that replicated it, again, they did it at great risk, was the Atlanta Falcons when they built their new stadium in Atlanta. They decided to take, and they used the Masters as the playbook. Low prices. They didn't want people waiting, so they built a lot more concession areas. And what happened is the amount of money that they brought in from food and beverage shot up. Again, it's right. So it's just completely counterintuitive to do that. But again,
and it also speaks to how the Masters, this one Augusta National in a small town in Georgia, Augusta, Georgia, has impacted a whole region. I mean, you've mentioned just now, the Atlanta Stadium, and you mentioned Buc-ee's, which is a kind of a Southern, institution, places that have mimicked and copied the Masters, and how it is that single golf tournament has influenced industry in profound ways for good.
Yes.
And that's an encouraging thing also.
Yeah. And that's why I wrote the book, to look, are there other places and other exemplar organizations that we could look to really make things better. And there are across the board. The other thing, that this is an incredible thing that I found out doing research for the book. Originally, the book was going to be 9 principles. It ended up being 10. And the 10th principle is use scarcity to create value. And I got the idea when I looked at, Augusta sells these garden gnomes. They're like 3 feet tall. Excuse me. They're limited edition. They actually don't disclose how many of them they sell, but they don't sell many of them. So somebody bought one the first time they were issued. They paid $39.50 for it. They sold it 7 years later for $8,900. So it speaks to a couple things. Number one, it speaks to the power and the value of that brand, right? If it was just a garden gnome, no one would pay near that. Because it's got the Augusta logo on it, people just want to be affiliated and associated with that brand. But that, again, it's the way they run their merchandise sales. You can only buy things at the Masters. They don't have an online shop, and everybody else, even Wimbledon, which is a close organization to Augusta in terms of how they do things, they'll sell merchandise online. Every other sporting organization will. Augusta does not. And they use that scarcity to just create tremendous value. And again, it's not about the money. It's about building the brand for the long term. And there's just so many lessons in how they do that that
How
can be
it's
applicable. Yeah.
it's incredible, and it's really a genius book to be able to give kind of a 50,000 foot view of what has been created now, coming close to 100 years. Ago, just a few years from, I guess we're at 95 this year, from the first one. So, it's a great study. I so appreciate the obvious in-depth research that you did to uncover these principles and to, support them with the details of, what Augusta National and the Masters has done. It's a great book. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, in lines with Links for Life, which I have a 40-year entrepreneurial career, running small companies. So I really appreciated these 10 principles and how they apply in terms of the business world. But Links for Life is the intersection of golf, growth, and God. And when I think about that, I think about personal growth. And one of the things I talk about in my other podcast, Space for Life and Links for Life, is that we learn parallels. We learn parallels from golf, that they have parallels to life. And we learn parallels from life that apply to business. And we learn parallels from business that apply to life. So I'm curious for you, is there, a particular principle that you've uncovered that you write about as a business principle and the implications it could be for how we might run or think about business that has particularly impacted you personally in terms of how you live your life?
Yeah, I'd say there's two of them. One of them is civility. Putting down your phone and being more present. You don't even realize you're doing it. Most people, they're distracted. They're talking to whoever, and they're not paying attention. We've just become very uncivil. It drives me crazy when you go into a public space and somebody's screaming into their phone like it's in their living room. So to me, that's one. I mean, a lot of the principles are not just for businesses. They're for individuals. And then the most important one that everybody can and should do is just having more respect for people. And that sounds like it's blindingly obvious, right? Of course, why wouldn't you have respect for people? And most people think they do, when they're dealing with their peers and with their family. But one of the things that was just overwhelming to me, when I had my initial dose of chemo, I had a very bad reaction to it. And one of the nurses' aides who was at the hospital, she worked the night shift. I was in really bad shape. They took me to the ICU a couple hours later, but she came into my room and sorry. She held my hand and she prayed for me. And, you know, it made an unbelievable difference, right? Like you need that. You really need that when you're in that space. But like, if you're totally honest with yourself, would you even have noticed like the people that come in and clean the room, like a nurse's aide who just does vitals and changes sheets, or like a busboy, or like there's so many people out there. They're just honest, hardworking people, and I think they've just been lost. So to me, having the respect of everybody, and just treating everybody with the same level of respect that you would treat, a member of Augusta. To me, that's one of the most important things that came out of this, right? And I wouldn't wish leukemia on anybody. It's a disaster, but there are some positive things that came out of it, and that was one, like the recognition about how you really should open your eyes a little wider and treat everyone like the Bible says you should.
Yeah.
Sometimes we in the modern world, sometimes we lose sight of that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. It is very true as you read through this book and as you think about it. So many of the principles are very, very obvious. They're not ones that someone would read the book and say, well, I don't know that I agree with that. And so they tend to be things like this respect that you're talking about that people nod their heads towards. And yet we see examples all around us of the exact opposite. And we rarely see examples of that type of thing practiced to a high level. And when we do, those are the special moments of life. And they are the best moments of life. So it is a call to our better selves and to what, as you say, what would the world be like if more of it operated like Augusta National? And all of that said, with the understanding that they're not without fault,
No, they're
they're
not.
not without criticism. There would be
Mhm.
people who would have some very significant um, and maybe very justified uh, quarrels with Augusta National and some of the decisions made. And yet, I think those they don't change the fact of so many good things that the Masters is about.
Yeah, I think a lot of the quarrels and quibbles would be with the past. If you look at the way, I mean, just the amount of charitable giving that they do and how they give back to the community and how they really do try to learn and do better every year. So yeah, I agree. None of us, no organizations are perfect, but I do think they strive to keep getting it right.
Yeah. All right. So as we're kind of closing down, and the Masters is just around the corner, um, amen, corner. As as we think about that, who would you love to see win this year's Masters?
I have to say Jordan Spieth because my wife will kill me if I I bet if you went to the betting markets and looked at the odds, I could win a lot of money on that bet. He's a very, very long shot, but
Yeah, you
just
could
a
win a lot of money on him.
lot of money on him. Sentimental favorite. I mean, I really wanted Rory to win last year, so he was the one that was glaringly obvious that should have won, and obviously did. He'd be a good repeat.
Yeah, he's one that you know people love or hate, or maybe even do both. Almost at the same time. Jordan would be, he would be a great, sentimental kind of
Yeah,
hero to come
yeah,
back and win after all of his journeys with the Masters, and
yeah,
so
yeah.
he
I'll
would
tell you
be.
who would be very popular. Tommy Fleetwood would be a very popular winner.
Yeah, he would. He's although I find that the Masters brings out a little bit more nationalism than
Well,
other tournaments that really want an American to win. Not everybody feels that way, but you get a little bit of that at the Masters too. Uh, what you always want and almost always get is that the Masters comes down to the final 9 holes on Sunday.
absolutely,
There
totally.
is it is such a genius layout with so much opportunity for such large uh, scoring swings in the last 9 holes that it is just so much
Yep,
fun to watch.
I agree, and it goes both ways. Oftentimes, it's the leader that implodes, self-inflicted.
Yeah.
But then you also have, people that they get eagle birdie birdie in their last four holes, right? I agree that back nine, the way it's set up is incredible.
Yeah. It's great. Gets me excited.
Yeah, me too. I
Just
can't wait.
thinking about it. Well, John, thank you. I really appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the book, The Augusta Principles. Where can people find it?
All over Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Apple Books, their local bookstore. So all over. Yep.
Great. Well, I know a little bit about what it takes to write a book. I've written one. You've written more than that one, right?
Yeah, three.
Yeah,
That's
so
the
I
third
know
one.
what it takes, and this is obviously a really well-researched book, so I appreciate it, immensely in terms of it, and it is very much worth read. Someone who wants a little bit more of the inside scoop and the bigger picture of Augusta will appreciate the book very much. And I also appreciate your, just willingness to share your story and how Augusta has actually played a little bit into your story. So,
Yeah, no, thank you, Tommy. I love the format of your podcast. It's really important, the intersection of faith and golf and other things in life. Congrats for what you're doing.
thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate it very much.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
well, everybody, I'll give you just a little taste ahead. In 2 weeks, we have a really fun episode with my good friend Robert Wren, who 16 years on the PGA Tour and had the experience of playing at the Masters. And so on Masters Weeks, Links for Life is coming out with an episode inside the ropes at the Masters to just share a little bit from someone who's really been there, what it was like to walk on to Magnolia Lane and into the clubhouse and to be on that first tee. So we've got a great episode ahead in just a couple of weeks. So join back in, and it'll be a great way for everybody to get their excitement all revved for the first round of the Masters. So thanks everybody for joining me on Links for Life. Thank you, John, and we will see you soon.